Prime Minister could have followed our common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Instead, he blew over $60 million on an Arrive scam app that we didn't need, didn't work, sent 10,000 people erroneously into quarantine, losing income, all the while the thing costed 750 times more than the Prime Minister promised. Won't he stand up today and admit that the app is just like him? It's not worth the cost, it's not worth the corruption.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition knows very well that the moment there were allegations around cost overruns or inappropriate contracting practices, the Canadian Border Services Agency immediately began an internal audit and made the appropriate referrals to the appropriate authorities. We take the obligation to manage taxpayers' money very seriously. Under no circumstances would we condone what the Auditor General determined to be contracting practices that did not follow the rules, and anybody who didn't will be held to account.
Absolutely.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, if he wants to hold someone to account for the Arrive scam, why not hold the one person who had the authority to create the Arrive scam and who had the authority to stop the Arrive scam, and that's the Prime Minister of Canada. He is the government. This was a government program we warned wasn't needed, wouldn't work, and now we know it went 750 times over budget. 75% of the contractors did no work at all, but they did buy whiskey and other treats for the top Liberal government officials. Again, won't the Prime Minister admit the app is just like him? Not worth the cost, not worth the corruption.
The Honourable Minister for Public Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my colleague from Public Safety said earlier, we would like to thank the Auditor General and welcome her recommendations on the Arrivecan application. Some of that report recommendations have already been implemented, some will soon be implemented, including the introduction of new measures to ensure that tasks and deliverables are clearly defined in future professional services contracts. We are committed to continuing to ensure that contracts are delivered in a fair, efficient, and transparent manner.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And again, the Prime Minister is hiding under a rock, refusing to stand up and explain himself after he blew $60 million on this Arrive scam while Canadians cannot afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. This scam involved taking money that could be used for border security, like scanning the 99% of shipping containers that go without any inspection from our ports with stolen cars, not to mention other things that Canadians could have done with that money. Instead, it stuffed the pockets of 75% of the contractors who did no work. Again, will the Prime Minister admit that the Arrive scam is not worth the cost and not worth the corruption?
Let's talk about garbage decisions. The Auditor General found that the Liberal government wasted almost $60 million on the Arrivecan app that no one uses and doesn't even work. All at a time when Canadians are struggling to put food on the table and pay their rent or mortgage.
The Prime Minister's Arrive scam was supposed to cost taxpayers $80,000, but it was confirmed by the Auditor General that it in fact cost more than $60 million. And after 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, we know that he's not worth the cost and he's definitely not worth the corruption. And this process was so corrupt that his favorite company of two guys in a basement, GC Strategies, got to write the contract for themselves to the exclusion of everybody else. And we know they did no IT work, that's been confirmed, but they got paid $20 million for their trouble. So will this Prime Minister just admit that he's lining the pockets of insiders at the expense of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, just because our colleague repeats a series of allegations that are not borne out by the facts does not make them true. Absolutely. The facts are, Mr. Speaker, the very moment that there were allegations of inappropriate contracting practices, an internal audit was begun by the President of the Border Services Agency, and referrals were made to the appropriate authorities, including the RCMP. Anybody who did not follow the contracting rules, Mr. Speaker, will be held to account.
The Prime Minister's Arrivecan app is not worth the cost or the corruption to Canadians. Today, the Auditor General informed us that Arrivecan, an app that was supposed to cost $80,000, will now cost Canadians a minimum of $60 million. It gets worse. Due to documentation that the AG says was deleted or destroyed, it could be more than $60 million. Wow. She doesn't know who worked on Arrivecan, if the work was fulfilled to requirements, or if it was even completed at all. So why did the Prime Minister rig the process so that insiders get rich and taxpayers foot the bill? Yeah.